Hey everybody, I'm super excited again to be here with Jordan from Assistable.ai. And the truth is, today I might be asking him some kind of hard questions. The idea is kind of seeing, agencies I've been hearing, I've been listening, and I see different questions. Jordan sees these questions as like, hey, I needed something stable, an AI tool that will be extremely stable, consistent in responses and everything like that. So we're going to be diving into some of those things and seeing what's happening and where this is going, as well as just we're going to kind of dive deeply into that. And then also just kind of see, hey, where is Assistable going over the next 3 months? Because obviously there's a bright future, and I love what I see when I look into the future, considering this for my own business and so many other agencies. So, hey, Jordan, again, welcome on, second time on the show. Super glad to have you. Um, Tell me, the last 2 weeks, what's happened? How are you? What's going on? Because you must be so tired. Yeah, there's been a lot happening. What has all happened in your world?
You tell me if you want the long story or the short story, because I can give you
Let's go with
both.
the long one.
Yeah, the long one is some of the platforms and vendors that we kind of built this on, like literally from the beginning. We've been super loyal to, and just kind of built on because the idea was like it was supposed to be scalable in a lot of meaningful ways. And then I think our volume, we didn't expect to get what we were getting and continue to get and continue to grow getting for probably the next 6-12 months. And so the hosting that we have most of these API endpoints on and stuff like that, what we're basically doing is taking down the main shard of the server completely for everybody, just based off of volume alone. Basically, we're running their data center out of memory. And so they're having to reset their computers whenever we do that, which is taking not only everybody else down, but us down and them down.
You're
And
saying not
so,
just Assistable, but other platforms built on this tool.
yes. Yeah. No, even if you go to the status page, you'll see little pops, and that's from us. And so we've been on calls with them probably, for the last couple of weeks, just figuring out, hey, what makes the most sense? Is it, optimization from either one of our ends or what? And I think what it really kind of came down to, even bringing in third parties to help out, shout out to Braden, who's also kind of a part of that process. What it kind of came down to is literally verbatim, they sent an email that said something to the effect of, we can no longer reliably support the platform unless you pay us XYZ money. And it was an astronomical amount of money. And so we had server migrations kind of scheduled for the first of the year to kind of get off of these platforms and not be so reliant as far as the way we process things. And that got expedited because of that email alone. And so I have the recordings of them, because I got an email on like a Friday saying something to the effect of, hey, we need to talk right now from them. And we get on the call and they kind of explain all this to me, and I'm like, well, I don't mean to be some type of way, but this sounds like a you problem, like that we need to that we need to fix as a platform. But basically, that kind of took our timeline from 30 45 days out to 24 48 hours. And so most of the work is done now, and it's kind of I don't think that working with them in that way is as much as a good fit anymore. So a lot of our processes are going to go to dedicated servers that we have control of, and we'll keep the rest of the front end, at least the visuals there, because that's less intensive. But it's mostly these back end processes, which up until this point didn't get as much volume, wasn't a big deal. Now they're getting crazy volume. The good news is they're offloaded, and that timeline that got expedited is executing them pretty flawlessly, and so now it's just putting it out.
That's good news. That's obviously very good news. So tell me a little bit more about the spikes that you've been seeing, like some numbers as far as like messages or actions, whatever would be
Yeah, we went
insightful.
from uh, so there's kind of three main things. So there's the regular just generation. So and message comes in, we respond to it. There is the context action, which most people use as like a follow up or like a campaigning tool now. And then there's the calling. So three sources of high traffic and high intensive processes. And what happened was is we were getting maybe consistently between all of them for 300 400,000 requests a day, and even out throughout the day there was no specific pop, it's just AI generation. two places where it kind of got intense was the message handling and then the context action specifically, because a lot of people are using that for the forever follow up, and a lot of people are
Yep.
using that for just general campaigning. And I don't know if it's coincidence. I don't know if it's just golden hour, but 12 p.m. It started at 9 a.m. and now it's like shifting to 12 p.m. Those all come in at once, and so we're getting like 600,000, 500, 600,000 requests from both, which is just absolutely. And then this is in like a 15-minute time period. And
Oh my
then
word.
on top of that, calls are coming in at the same time. And then on top of that, messages are coming in at the same time. And then basically the memory of the server that this is hosting on is like, whoa, chill out for a minute.
Right. Right.
Because we don't necessarily queue them too, because that queue would be, I think we tested that one day, that queue would be very, very long. But that's kind of what's happening. It's almost like a pop, not only in direct users, but resold users, and then also like the agencies that have been with us for a long time are starting to scale up now. A lot of people who
Yeah.
have been with us, or been with us for a few months, they're starting to get into their stride. They're starting to acquire customers, and so I think that's kind of attributing to like a huge jump in volume, not only from just new people on the platform, but I think the people who are on here are starting to hit their stride, which
Which
is
is a
a
good
good
thing.
thing. It's a good
Yeah.
thing, but it's also like, holy shit, we didn't plan for that for 6 to 12 months.
That's a very huge spike. And if you just, I know you once showed me a graph of kind of how it in the last month or so it just spiked up. I'm like, that is ridiculous numbers you're hitting.
Yeah,
Like just crazy.
yeah,
Um, so so that's obviously a lot of good stuff coming with that. But the question that kind of remains in many people's minds, okay, so we've seen multiple pieces of this be replaced. How
yeah.
many more are there? Like, how many more times is that going to happen till, it's solid, it's stable, it's never going to come down.
Yeah, I think never going to come down to a very bold statement.
100%. Yeah.
Because I still, my thing I always say is, OpenAI has more money than God, it seems, and they still go down, and I don't understand that one. But I think really kind of the last parts is getting what is most of these intensive processes completely off, and so it'll almost just like they won't even be associated with, like I said, they're just not a good fit anymore, and so they won't even be associated with the service anymore. Which chat is already there. It was going to get pushed this morning, but making the post to the community, there's some things that need to happen before we do that. And then really it's just voice is just waiting for that same green light, and then the context action's waiting for that same green light, and then we're good to go. Those are kind of the main processes there. Most of the time, it's been like, even in the past, where it's like, we're doing XYZ migration, we're doing, optimization, we're doing whatever. It was to the fact of like, even from the people that we worked with at the time, asking like, what do we do? How do we not go down? How do we make sure that these things are done correctly? And those optimizations are put into place. Those recommendations were taken to heart, and then still, it seems like either between the compounding volume or everything else, they almost scale faster than the solution provided. And so they're like, it'll support you to this. We're like, great, and then we hit that. Fun.
So even in just in a little bit. And so that might be a bit of an ongoing process, like to always upgrade the servers, upgrade the pieces. But is that something that would result in a lag in that case, or a downtime? Or is that something that you can foresee it more and be able to get that in place beforehand?
The good thing about that, the first thing is, on this infrastructure, it's infinitely scalable, which is awesome. Once we're on it, at that point, it's like, especially with the way we have things structured, it's like it scales with our volume where we're at. It'll support it, and then even if we go into the future, it's going to cost more money, but at least it's all kind of done at the same time. And really, kind of the migration of that is like, at least how we kind of have it is we're starting to already kind of route traffic there. And so even some background processes, even some chat stuff that you see today is routed there, but you really can't even tell it. Besides like some slight differentiations in like the user interface or like the message logs or something like that, you really won't even notice it. And the good news is it also allows us to buy a little time and error handle a lot better on the way that we're doing it, instead of taking it from a technical perspective, from like an API type infrastructure to an SDK. We're using a lot of this stuff inside of like Google Cloud, rather than trying to piece it together on Cloudflare or something like that. It is a seamless transition and infinitely scalable. for the foreseeable future.
Okay, well that's obviously great news, and I figured, with time there comes a time when the pieces are in place that it's gonna scale, and that the pieces are in there that you can
Yeah.
just continue seamlessly scaling, right? So
Yeah.
honestly, I'm excited for next year to see where this goes, and altogether, like with the 2.1. I just messaged you the other day. I'm like, this was actually just before the time when there was a crash, but I was like, this
Yeah.
thing is just purring along so nicely. Like it's going really well. And then
Totally.
obviously it was like the crash
Oh,
happened.
dude.
Um,
I was telling my wife, I was like, when 2.1 came out, and for context too, that was more of like a data restructure, and it was also kind of an interface restructure for the idea of scalability. It kind of came in parts because of the timeline of like at the beginning of the year, this was going to happen anyways. We changed some front end stuff to be a little bit more malleable, a little bit smarter. The platform as it sat, even like from version 1 to 2, while things had changed, like at least on like the way chat ran and everything, it was still the platform that I had built a year and a half ago theoretically. And so what 2.1 was so great about was like we took at least things that I've learned along the way. I've obviously became a smarter person in programming, became a smarter person in scalable infrastructure. And we took those best practices into place to say like, hey, the way it sits today is the way it's going to be for the foreseeable future from an interface perspective because of how scalable it was put together. And then the back end
mhm,
was the second piece of that is like once we have this in place, we have all these data types where they need to be, then we start routing that traffic to a server that can actually kind of handle the volume that we're seeing. For things
okay.
like because email was on the roadmap. That's like a big thing, and other services, other like chat completion stuff like that we had talked about from the context action. That was all in the roadmap for that. But just from the last 2 weeks, it just so happened to coincide with that pop in volume, which is unfortunate because it's like the causation correlation thing of like 2.1 came out, so excited, but then you just see that bump
Mhm.
in volume, and I'm like, whoa, that's fun.
Yeah, well, we're through that now, and hopefully from here on, it starts becoming more and more stable. Obviously, it'll take a little bit till all the pieces are ported over, like you were
Yeah.
saying, calls potentially later this week and things of that nature. But hopefully, that does come fairly soon.
Yeah.
And then let me just see here. I had a couple of questions on. So this would be like the app too busy, like when it's loading and it doesn't show up. It says
Hmm.
app too busy. Is this
Yep.
part of that?
Yes, that's the server that we run on, or the shard of the server that we run on, running out of memory from the volume. And so what
Okay.
they're doing is we're doing so much at once that like if you're ever like a nerd or you do anything with maybe not even servers, but say you have a gaming PC or something like that, and you know that you have your GPU or your CPU or whatever, and it only has so much memory. You go look at your laptop spec; it only has so much memory of things it can do at once, and that's what we were just slamming that. And so when that happens, a computer has to restart, a server has to restart, app too busy. And
Mm,
that's us going back. If I could one day be nice enough and put out my Karen emails I've sent about that, it's ridiculous that even happened. But the good news is like the chat completion, the context, the calling is like end of the week, and really the kind of the only things we have to figure out is making sure that to the end user that we're still getting like instead of hosting things like logs host like locally that's going to be on that server, we just need to call to it. That's making sure that transition is smooth. But from like an infrastructure, it's like we're already routing traffic there. We already have like sub accounts on there, and the transition seems to be a bit more seamless than I even thought it would be. Thank God.
okay.
And
Well,
so
that's
the app too
awesome.
busy is like server running out of memory.
Okay. So essentially just refresh
Yeah,
till it comes back on. Like,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
not that there's something you're working on this on the tool and that for that reason it's down. It's just like, okay, just refresh and you're good.
No, no, yeah. Then that's that. You'll notice when I'm working on things, you'll get that little banner that just says we've updated
Yeah.
this thing. But
Yeah.
that's completely from like the server saying like, bro, chill out. And that's
Yeah.
basically what that is.
Yeah. That's cool. And then if calls are being delayed, like outbound calls, for example, the action, the content goes through the workflow, through the action, but then the call doesn't happen for, multiple minutes.
Yeah,
Is that kind of tied to the same thing?
it's all tied to that. It's all
Okay.
completely tied to that. Because even on days where it's like running like butter, and that starts to happen for whatever reason, like memory gets low. It's like even when you have a million tabs open on your laptop and you notice that your computer gets a little slower, that's
Hmm.
exactly the same thing. And so, with that transition, the calling and all those like GHL endpoints and everything like that are going to going over there to be able to kind of handle them in a real meaningful way. And we still might run into some stuff like too many requests or something like that maybe in the future. But at least like that slowing, or at least the getting data back from understanding it is going to be pretty much instant now.
There we go. There we go. And then with that, so the calls are being ported over, so that should be resolved. And then the context action, is that one, you turn that off today here. Is that staying off till that's ported over, or are you turning it back on later
Really,
today?
what I needed it off for is like if you look at like capacity or CPU, like percentages of like when are we taking up the most memory, it was literally from like 12 to 1 every day. And so that's why I turned that off, and you notice it didn't go down today. Is we that context action is rightfully being used a lot. It's a good one.
Yeah,
I use it
it's a
plenty.
good one.
It's a great one. It's almost too great.
I,
But no, that one we'll probably throttle it over the next couple of days, and probably even with the chat migration, tonight or tomorrow morning, we'll probably move that one too, which means we won't have to turn it off, inevitably. But like it was today, where kind of this stuff is happening, and I'm filling out when people want this to happen, because it could have happened this morning, but there's some changes that need to happen from kind of everyone's perspective there. If doing it, later, and we can add context action in there, no problem. And the
mhm.
way that we'll run it's a bit different too. Again, we get smarter every day. The more that this stuff comes up, you don't ever foresee it, and then it happens, and then you're like, "Holy shit!"
I was
But
just thinking about that as you were talking. It's like with so many of the different pieces, when a year ago you had no idea that the context action was going to be running that much volume. You had no idea of all these different things, and now you have the analytics, you have the data. So as you say, you
yeah,
become smarter every day. Now you can foresee a lot more of where things are going to come from. However, at the same time, there's always going to be those points where, oops, okay, that was a big one,
yeah,
a ton of volume there.
yeah,
And as far as the context action, I agree. It's a really really good one. Most people run just a templatized SMS and a workflow for, say, speed to lead, right? The first message, it's a set message.
yeah,
But I don't know why this didn't cross my mind before, but if you have a lead form that has a certain data in it where you're pulling it from the customer, maybe it's a certain type of maybe patient, maybe they're interested in orthodontics or in teeth cleaning, whatever it were to be, but you have that saved in your contact. Now you can just feed that into the AI, and you can still tell it to respond with something completely different, like have a
hmm,
templatized message in there, but you're giving it the context for future conversations. So now you don't have to have two, three, four different assistants, and it just
exactly.
takes one little context action. But now you just want to be aware that you have to, for now, just have a backup. And with
Yeah,
the AI replying tag that you put out there, like whenever the AI is replying, it will put out the tag, it will take it off again, using that to mitigate, to be aware kind of a fallback, have a fallback in place like that. Then you can still have the context action in place and still have that pre-templatized SMS message ready in case the context action doesn't catch it.
yeah,
So, and by the way, I'm just dropping that. I think I would have. I'm releasing this video tomorrow. So yesterday, you should have received in the Christmas. If you were in that Christmas flow that I'm doing, um, I'm releasing a bit of a snapshot for you. Just quickly install a bit of a fallback on that. By the way, so
that's fun.
yeah.
Yeah, that's exciting.
So yeah, it's actually honestly doing what you wrote in your Easter eggs there in that post. Basically, just putting that in and explaining it a little bit because I think
Yeah,
a lot of people kind of missed that.
yeah,
So yeah. Anyway, all that being said, so basically, what you're seeing here is once this is done in the next week, 2 weeks, once this is all kind of settled down, we should have a stable platform, um,
yeah.
reliable, consistent, that doesn't, at 12 o'clock to 1 o'clock, it's not down. Things keep working.
Yep. Yep. And even on this one, what's good about it is because it's almost like a mirrored database. I'm trying not to be too nerdy about it because I've just had to be over the last little bit. But even say for whatever reason, anything else kind of takes like the front end down, like app too busy or whatever. At least back end processes will work like like clockwork. And so
Yeah.
while you may not be able to see, things that are going on, it still works like an API in a real meaningful way. So things are still processing, things are still going out, and then you just get the data back to wherever you're at and whenever it comes back up. I don't think that'll happen because the most intensive processes that take it down are mostly like, the ones that are getting ported over. But well, where the plan is eventually, especially now that we have the context behind a lot of this, is that almost every process will go over there over
Okay.
time. Access token handling from GHL, like even things to message logging and things like that will be over there that they're just pulled, on page load rather than, locally. And so over time, you'll start to see those things happen. The biggest things are like, let's just get these main things that need to happen 24/7 with no interruption. Let's get those over there first. And then we can worry about the additional stuff, because the idea would be access token handling over there too. That's like a big thing, especially because of how much more powerful it is to do error handling. Like even in this new chat completion that we have running from like the SDK rather than the API, we can do a lot of manipulation of like outputs and tools. Like even you notice now when you run something and someone may put in two parameters into a tool, technically it breaks OpenAI's endpoint. It's like, hey, we can't do this. But even on the SDK, we have a cleansing flow to say, like, let's take anything that may be a bad function, let's take it out or try to reformat it. Any parameters that may be duplicated, we cleanse it, make it good. And then so we're able to error handle a lot more now in a real meaningful way, which is really good for not only consistent runs and even, taking the idea of just the server side stuff and then the user side stuff of like configuration, cleansing it out and making sure it's good. But even on this one, we can do a lot of vendor fallback too. So this
Okay.
won't happen immediately, but like things like a model walk down of like Claude, Grok, and OpenAI, and interchanging the two meaningfully is way easier. It's way more doable and it's way faster. And even from the fact of being able to now select those as like run models or whatever is possible.
Okay. So essentially what you're saying is that the fallback method, the from Grok, Claude, all that,
Yeah.
that is something that will be coming shortly, or is there anything of that nature in place at the moment?
There is some in there. There's like even on like failures from like it's like an all else fails type thing. So like we have the cleansing for like prompting. We have cleansing for any type of user input already in there. And so I've tested the hell out of that just with some things that I've seen, like, improper names or two names, duplicates and stuff like that. And we're able to cleanse those really, really well. And then so now the only two unknowns will go high level and say OpenAI goes down. But we even have some like stock messaging. So at least people are getting responses, like their canned message, almost like a workflow message.
Hmm.
So at least they're getting responses. But probably, after this goes in, we make sure that everything ties in and is real meaningfully working as it should. It's a clean migration. Then the ideas of the other ones come out too, where it's like it's either interchangeable or we'll just walk down to the hierarchy. Is our highest tier that we have accounts with is OpenAI. The second highest tier we have accounts with is Claude. And then the third highest is Grok. So that's going to be like all else fails in the world. Claude and OpenAI are down. It's a zombie apocalypse. We'll use Grok. We may rate
Hmm.
limit first, but even then, we have fallbacks for rate limiting too, which is awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Cool. That's good. Because I know like consistency and having those fallbacks is one of the top priorities for many agencies deploying Assistable,
Yeah.
and I think rightly so, right? Because they need to be able to rely on their clients being served properly, consistently,
Yeah.
and I know that is a value that you hold very closely, and I know that's why you've been really pushing yourself this week to get these things in place,
Yeah.
which I'm sure everybody appreciates that. So. Now, when it comes to support, now here's another question for you. So I've heard people be like, "Hey, I'm just not getting support. Like, I can't reach Jordan. I can't reach the support team. I can't get this thing fixed. Like, what's going on? Where can I find that? How can I do this? What's currently happening with support requests, and kind of where are you seeing this going?"
Yeah, well, I think we'll do a lot of stuff on. And sorry, this dog. We may even have to pause so I can go put her in the crate real quick. Are we able to
Sure.
pause this? I'll put
Yeah.
her up so
If
we
not,
can.
I can cut it out later.
Okay. I
Go
may go
ahead.
put her up if she mom left, and so she's just lost in the world. Um,
All right. I'll mark it over here and we can just cut it out later.
yeah,
You're
let me
good.
go put her up because or not, she's just gonna sit here to do this the whole time.
There comes
Sorry
the
about
second
that.
one.
Yeah, support right now they're mostly going to like the team that handled that, but there probably will be a slight transition in the way things are handled because right now they're ticketed in like a very basic fashion, and again it's funny because the correlation of like support ticketing and everything obviously grows with the compounding volume of everything else. And so the plan is we have kind of infrastructure in place now too for like taking what is just like an email system of like we have some basic tickets and we can fulfill them that way to like a more meaningful actual like intercom type. We'll be using intercom to ticket, use email, do live chat support and things like that. And we also have a model that kind of like the Haley widget that sits there. It'll have most of these answers in there for people who need the stuff, at least the stuff that we've seen or that we can prepare for. And then the support team will be there, to be able to handle the things that we're not prepared for or just have never seen before. And on the thing with getting in touch with me, let me be honest, that's a hard thing to do these days. I try my very, very best, but I shit you not, when I wake up in the morning, it's like 180 text messages, 200 emails, and like 17 to 50 DMs on Skool. So I try my best to keep up with that, but we'll probably keep that idea of triage to like, let's put it in the right place. And that's
Yeah.
probably more so the idea of where do I put this? It's going to be there. Yeah, rather than doing that, because that also kind of confuses me, confuses support team or
Yep.
any active people of like if you send me a text and I can't get to it because I just literally cannot get to it, then it goes quote unquote unresolved. Where if it's all kind of in a proper place, if I need to step in there later, sure, but it needs to all be kind of put in a proper place and ticketed in a real more meaningful way, and that's the plan for it now. Is we were lucky enough to get some cool stuff from Intercom. They're kind of like giving us a startup thing to give us an ultimate package, which was awesome. And so that'll start to be deployed in there, kind of like how you see on like prod deployments, where it's like you have a help center, you have your ticketing system, you have your messaging system, and then we can run all of that out of there.
Love it. So this is something that the would be a chat for. Okay, so I'm just thinking here for resellers, for their clients, and even for specific. I guess it wouldn't just have to be resellers, but any agencies and their clients. Would this be kind of like gray labeled support on that front, or is that something
Probably
that you allow for other agent, other businesses that handle support that want to do gray label support for them to come in and potentially have the accessibility to a widget in the platform?
kind of both. And the idea, and it's not an idea that I love, because I really do care about anyone who's on the platform, whether they're through us or a reseller. Like it doesn't matter to me. You're on the platform. I really do care about what's going on. But I think what we may have to do for a scenario like that is the understanding of if you're a reseller is like you're going to be kind of taking on some of that responsibility. It's a big responsibility to take on. But that's why reseller is such a tries to be an exclusive thing. It's like you're signing up for a bit more than trying to resell something. You're signing up to kind of build a business around it. And so probably initial rollout will just be direct to users. So non resellers will go to their resellers who can use it. So that way we can stay on top of everything and manage everything in a real meaningful way with people we like have the ability to manage on. Like even for example, somebody's like a resale user and they're like, "Can you manage my subscriptions?" Well, it's nothing that we can really do, and it's not that it's taking up a spot in the pipeline of ticketing, but it's like there's other tickets to probably triage ourselves, or we wouldn't have any impact on that. So probably roll it out to direct, and then the ability to kind of like siphon that from a resold user or a reseller user, and then eventually we'll have probably more robust capabilities as that team scales out. The problem now is like let's get rather than something that we can just send a video on like OAuth or something that we can send a video on as like calendar integration, like let's worry about the things that may actually be happening is like, hey, I cannot get a response at all. Like that's something that we need to worry about rather than I can't get a calendar connect and I look and you just don't have any availability and go high level. That could be done with video.
Yeah, that's something you should already checked out. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, that's awesome, and I think that answers a lot of the questions that folks in the community have,
Yeah.
and obviously looking forward to seeing those pieces implemented, especially when it comes to the consistency and the stability. So if we were to look ahead, where are you seeing? What are some of the kind of the key points that you want to implement within 3 months, like that you're seeing? I'm not talking about like fancy new things, which I think you're kind of putting those to the side anyways. Like, hey, we kind of put ourselves in place here now. We have the piece that we need. We need to just stabilize or whatever we need to do. Kind of what are you seeing in the next 3 months?
Yeah, it's a shift in direction. Yeah, so my kind of idea on that is like kind of what we even talked about in even a more meaningful way, and one that I don't really see even implemented in the broader AI, in the AI industry is like our focus really is just uptime, reliability, and error handling. That's like the major things of like the vendors that are in play. And then also like our shift in focus of like quote unquote features, like the thing that always gets requested and eventually one day, right, is like a chat widget. That's totally fine. On the same dime, you can literally get a chat widget from anywhere for practically free and run it just fine. So that's not focus for me, at least in like the foreseeable future. The stuff that where my focus is like more robust, AI configuration stuff. If we are going to add something, let's add more fallbacks. Let's add more ability to do XYZ from people who need it, like call transfer, warm transfer, caller ID, batch calling, campaigning, and things like that. That's stuff that's more meaningful to me than it is like something like a chat widget or a snapshot. Not saying those things aren't like, practical and meaningful, but at least from my perspective of like what I'd like to focus on, those are the things. Because even our shift in like, customer profile that I've seen like on the success of the inverse bell curve is like the people who really run with this are like the bigger agencies that already kind of have the tech stuff figured out, at least on like the go high level side, and then AI automation agencies. And the feedback we hear from them is mostly not like, hey, you don't have a chat widget. It's mostly like,
Yeah,
hey, can I do caller ID verification? Or can I
yeah,
do number pooling? Can I do this? And those
yeah.
are the things we want to focus on. And, we do have some people that we're looking on hiring. I don't know if that's going to be this month or next month. They'll come on and their job specifically will be stuff like widgets and like that's literally what they're going to do all day. But at least for like the main dev stuff, the stand-in CTO that'll come in, plus me, plus whomever else will be on that team, our focus is more so going to be on deployment and error handling from deployment, especially as we go to other CRMs and stuff like that. So it may that to people either may sound like music to your ears or it may be a bummer because some people are like, I wish we had more widgets. It's like, well, I wish we had more uptime. And so that's
Yeah,
kind of taking the priority, especially
yeah.
like as we're learning, we're going through this for the first time like everybody else, especially from a platform perspective. And like this whole server thing, that's crazy. I just never
Yeah.
would have thought. And, we learn every day, but our focus is mostly going to just be on that stuff is like more meaningful deployment, more meaningful vendor handling, more meaningful, uptime, and then we'll do the rest maybe someday.
I fully support that, and yes, I do feel a bit of both. I'm like, hey, I want that chat widget, but at the same time, what you're just saying is that we'll first take care of the pieces that you, as the agency, as the user, can't do yourself with some other tool. For
Yeah.
example, warm call transfer. I have no way without getting into your back end, which I'd have to break into your house and somehow figure out how to code and all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
It's just not a question. Like I can't do it. So first you'll do those things. After that, then we can do the fancy little things potentially.
Yeah. The
But
shiny object
essentially,
stuff. Yeah. The
yeah,
stuff that you hear about are like, a new lead magnet. And it's not that like I said, it's not that I don't think those things are important because I really like they are in a real meaningful way, especially if you're an agency just getting started and you need
yeah,
those resources or you have no idea how to deploy resources like that. Like one that comes up now is like build ship a lot just because it's a platform that I use a lot and stuff like that. But mostly just like the stuff that really is like meaningfully important to deployment. Like, say you get an enterprise deal today and they need something specific, and you're shit out of luck if you can't do it. That's the stuff I'd rather focus on than like you can literally go anywhere. You can actually get a chat widget from BuildShip for free You could do that
Yeah,
way.
yeah, yeah, 100%. Yeah, I would fully support that. Fully support that. Once every piece that's currently in Assistable, once that's solid, everything's there, then consider the next thing. But before that, well, there's other priorities. So
Yeah,
that
exactly.
is fantastic, and I'm glad to hear that. I think that will help many people kind of well appreciate that. Now,
Yeah.
one other question, and this is more on what's happening as far as the team around you, because
Hmm.
for bigger agencies, hey man, like you could go on a motorbike, be hit by a train, or whatever happens. What's happening as far as a team around you to make sure this thing keeps chugging along? Say Jordan wasn't here anymore.
Yeah. What I don't think a lot of people realize too is like I have bootstrapped this platform on my own without taking any investment or even for like months, on like voice specifically, kind of just paying for it out of pocket in a real meaningful way. And so, for companies that we compete with, if you kind of look at some doing the same scale, they have 10, $20 million in funding, and it's little old me and my credit card. And, but the good news is the like infrastructure that we have in place, like the wallet system, is a good way for like to say at least pay for what you use in a real
Yeah,
meaningful way, and then like even stuff with making sure that the billing and everything is good. Like we're kind of at a point where it's evening out, where it's like we're not quote unquote in beta, we're not like a test thing. It's like we're evening out. This is production grade, becoming a production grade enterprise type solution. And so, with that being said, is there's some people in place that are coming on at the first of the year, and like key executive roles where it's like we'll have more around tech, we'll have CTOs, we'll have a CRO, we'll have stuff like that, where it's like that is a little bit more scalable. And even today, by the way, for anyone's worried about me getting hit by a train or something like that, there are like 5 people who have access to like the actual backend
okay,
in the community. There's
nice,
like 5 people
nice.
who have access to that. If I killed over tomorrow, they would fly with the platform pretty easily. They actually know it. They're in
Yeah,
there pretty often. And
okay,
so,
yep,
because they help triage in the community.
yeah.
And
There we go,
so,
there we go.
yeah, it shouldn't be, it's almost like a life insurance policy in that way, but also like in the first of the year, those key executive roles. And then also, we have one or two that we're looking on coming for like software engineering. So at least like from the infrastructure side, and especially setting like this stuff up, or maybe more familiar to someone on like, a JavaScript type, framework, SDK type framework where it's more meaningful for an outside developer come in and really work into. That's going to be really good for that. And then from there, mostly, and at least in my perspective, this may not be a shared perspective from a lot of people, but my focus on hiring and bringing on people is going to be more from like the actual tangible side of like tech rather than like the defensive side of support, where we can just tech out most of the stuff and create scalable stuff rather than trying to just sit and support and triage all day, which is more of a reactive thing. Now,
Yeah,
support is part of that timeline, and success is part of that timeline, and additional services are part of that timeline. But at least in my thing, that needs to happen first is let's get people in here smart enough to go ahead and create solutions to problems you don't already have, so that the problems don't come up. And if they do, they can at least be triaged by a more smaller, well trained support team.
yeah, yeah. That's awesome. Well, it sounds like you're hiring some key positions around you. CTO, CTB, CTV, CT, whatever it all is. I hope there's one that's called BT for Braden Taylor. I like that guy.
There
He
is.
should.
Braden, I'll tell you what, like I would probably have a whole segment on this right here, thanking that human being for he's been a big part of this process on migration too. Because again, this is like even those who don't understand tech to understand like what happened in such a short time frame is like an astronomical thing. And he's been a really key role. And one day we'll probably get him on here and we'll tell the story of what happened over the past couple days with talking to this vendor and the things that were said. And I'll tell you what, Braden was hot and heavy and coming in on them because I'm a bit sometimes of a nice guy, and even in those calls I'm like just playing nice guy, but then he comes in hot and heavy and he's like asking these things that literally almost have like the loader image above their head. And he even sent me. This is why I love this guy too. So not only is he like one of the smartest people I know, not only is he like super, involved in doing this right now. The dude's probably he's getting an equity agreement at the first of the year just because of how involved he's going to be and how involved he has been. Then he sends me memes of their faces, like the next day, almost like trophies.
Oh, we love you, Braden. We
He's a
love
great
you.
guy. But yeah,
Oh yeah,
he's
I've
involved.
never seen such an analytical person with such a humor. It's
It's
awesome.
great. It's like the icing on the cake of not only like having that like again we're on these calls and these are like we have people in New York with like suits on and like we're like this and he's just drilling the hell out of these people and then like I said just like almost like a trophy a screenshot of their faces as he's drilling them almost framed in like a it's great yeah but
There we
definitely
go.
in some
Yep.
capacity if we can't get him on as full time if we can't capture him in a real meaningful way he's definitely getting an equity agreement he's going to be a part of it somehow
Yep.
he's just too good to not, and he's been really good to the community. He's been really good to me. He's been really good to the platform. He's going to be a part of it in
Yeah.
some meaningful way. I'll tell you that. Even if I have to headhunt that guy, I don't care.
There we go. Yep. Yep. And if he ever comes on a podcast, we'll expect to see a framed trophy picture in the
Yes,
behind
you'll have
him.
to ask
Yeah.
him about that. It's great.
Yeah. That's awesome. Okay, good stuff. I think that kind of covers the different pieces here that I was wanting to touch on. And honestly, thanks a bunch for what you do with the platform because I know for many people it's literally a life changer. Like hearing stories about, hey, I quit my job because I've got some clients here, and or plan to quit my job. There's just so much. Yeah, I think it's going to set a lot of people free and
Yeah.
allow them to do something that they wanted to get into for a long time. So,
I'll end that with like a story too. Is along with all this stuff, I also have all these calls that we did for like the Black Friday thing. Is like let's just take time with some people. And I'm already feeling like shit because for those who, even if you don't understand it or think that this is a true statement, I literally probably care more about your business than you do. This shit keeps me up at night. Not only from like an infrastructural perspective, but like I genuinely care about every single person who's on this platform, almost probably more than they care about themselves on this platform. Um, and yesterday, I'm already kind of feeling some type of way because this is happening. It's just a shitty position to be in. And, obviously feeling the heat from it in a really meaningful way while trying to still keep my head up and do it. But I get on a call. So yesterday's my birthday, and I'm still taking these calls just to make sure everyone's, getting the attention they need. Back to back calls, everything's still good, right? But still just kind of a situation to be in. I slept,
yep.
most of my birthday and today. But I get on the call, dude, and the guy literally answers the phone and he's like, I want to be honest with you, I only took this call to give you a break. He's like, I'm going to take this call this time, this 30 minutes, so no one else will take it. And I just want you to sit there and rest for like a minute. And I'm going to tell you some stuff. And he was telling me about how he got on the platform and just through kind of the stuff that he was working on and kind of marrying it with this, the dude was able to get his family out of like a war zone from another country and bring them here to the US. And he went into some other stuff that that I want put out here, but I mean it was like almost in tears getting off that call because you have the bad days, you're the high highs, you're on the mountain, and then you have the low lows. It's been a little low, and hearing
Yep.
that, it's like,
Yep.
man, that's what we do it for. That's literally all these sleepless nights had meaning again with something like hearing that. So it was awesome to see that. And all I really care about, even from that, and it lit a fire up under my ass to say, is like, let's make more stories like that because that was, it didn't even really hit me until that night. I'm like, I finished the calls, I literally sleep for a little bit and I wake up and I'm like, holy shit, dude, that's one of the craziest things I've ever heard. I can't believe we have impact like
Yep.
that.
Yep.
Let's do more. And so it
That's
was,
incredible.
it
Yep.
was, it was, it hit me hard.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. That's what really makes it worth it.
It
Money
does.
is great, but stuff like that, that's life changing. That's real. That's good.
Yeah, never really cared about the money. I've always cared about the impact, and that was hopefully a testament to it. If anything, it was definitely like I said, you go through times in business, in life, where times may not be great, but you get something like that, and you're like, I remember why I'm doing this, and that's exactly
Yeah.
what that epiphany was.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome, man. Hey, seriously appreciate the time and honestly even the time like you've been taking with it with whoever, got on the calendar uh, after the Black Friday event there. Like you taking the time for those, they were meant as support calls or whatever, like I'll work with you one on one to help you out. Um, and so hugely appreciate that. And then just for anybody who is struggling with, hey, like I need more help, more support, that type of stuff. I just want to put it out there. I do have a group where I go on twice weekly. We have calls, answer questions, whatever you need. Like typically it's kind of on the technical, support side, helping you integrate things, but we can literally go into your computer, set things up for you during that call. So just consider that as well. That way it might take some weight off Jordan and stuff.
Fully vouched and backed by us as well. Completely.
Much appreciated. Yeah, 100% much appreciated. So anyway, yeah, thanks a ton, and we will catch you all later. Thanks a lot, Jordan.
All right, brother. Hope that was helpful.
100%.